There's a strange moment that happens before every major collapse. Nothing looks wrong yet. The streets are still busy. Listings are still selling. Headlines are still optimistic. People are still reassuring each other that everything is fine. But under the surface, the numbers stop working. That's where Florida's housing market is right now. What's coming isn't a mild slowdown or a healthy correction. What's forming is something much more serious. A structural breakdown driven by costs, insurance failures, and affordability limits that simply cannot be ignored anymore. And this isn't coming from YouTube doomers or anonymous Twitter accounts. This warning comes from people who've spent their entire careers studying real estate cycles, including economists who watched the 2008 collapse up close and see familiar patterns forming again. Only this time, the foundation is weaker. Let's start with the most basic problem. Home prices and incomes have completely disconnected. Over the past 4 years, Florida home values have surged by roughly 45%. In some metro areas, the jump has been even higher. That means a home that sold for $300,000 in 2020 is now being marketed closer to $440,000 or $450,000. At the same time, wages haven't come anywhere close to keeping up. Income growth during that same period landed closer to 20 to 25%, depending on the sector. That gap matters because housing markets don't function on optimism. They function on paychecks. When prices rise twice as fast as incomes, affordability collapses. And when affordability collapses, demand doesn't disappear overnight. It erodes slowly, then suddenly. That's the part most people miss. Markets don't crash because everyone panics at once. They crash because fewer and fewer people are able to participate, until the entire system is propped up by speculation, leverage, and hope. Florida is well past that point. Ask yourself a simple question: who can realistically afford Florida housing now? In places like Miami-Dade County, the median home price has pushed past $600,000. Meanwhile, median household income sits around $70,000. That math doesn't work, not even remotely. A household earning $70,000 cannot sustainably carry a mortgage, insurance, property taxes, and maintenance on a $600,000 home, especially at today's interest rates. Even dual-income professional households are stretched thin. First-time buyers are effectively locked out. Middle-class families are being forced further inland, further north, or out of state entirely. What remains include cash buyers, investors, retirees spending equity from elsewhere, and high-income remote workers. That's not a stable buyer base. It's a narrow, fragile pool that dries up quickly when conditions change. And conditions are changing. The insurance crisis is the real trigger. Most people think housing crashes start with prices. They don't. They start when financing breaks, and in Florida, insurance is breaking the financing system. Private insurance companies have been steadily exiting the state. Some have gone bankrupt. Others have simply stopped writing new policies. The ones still operating have dramatically raised premiums. As a result, Florida's insurer of last resort, the Citizens Property Insurance, has ballooned to nearly 700,000 policies. That's not a sign of stability. That's a warning light. When insurers pull back, lenders panic. Because lenders don't care about sunshine or population growth. They care about risk. No insurance means no mortgage. No mortgage means no buyers. No buyers means falling prices. This isn't theoretical. It's already happening in pockets across the state. The true cost of ownership is exploding. Let's talk about what it actually costs to own a home in Florida now. It's not just the purchase price. Homeowners are facing insurance premiums ranging from $10,000 to $20,000 per year, rising property taxes as local governments scramble to fund infrastructure, special assessments in condo buildings for deferred maintenance, mandatory flood insurance due to remapped flood zones, and higher utility costs and extreme heat. Stack all of that together, and you get a brutal reality. Even people who can afford the purchase price often can't afford the monthly carrying costs. This is where denial sets in. Buyers convince themselves that insurance will come back down, I'll refinance later. Florida is different, or people will always want to live here. And that's what people say right before affordability breaks demand. One of the least discussed but most dangerous factors right now is the ongoing flood map revisions released by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. Homes that were never considered flood risks are suddenly being reclassified. When that happens, flood insurance becomes mandatory regardless of whether the homeowner has ever experienced flooding. For many households, that extra $3,000 to $6,000 per year is the breaking point. And once those letters go out, many owners will try to sell. The problem is obvious. Who wants to buy a house that costs tens of thousands per year just to insure? That's when listings pile up. Demand isn't growing, it's being destroyed. Economists use a term that perfectly describes what's happening now: demand destruction. Demand doesn't vanish because people stop wanting homes. It disappears because the price no longer makes sense relative to income and risk. Buyers don't panic. They simply stop showing up. You're already seeing it: open houses with minimal traffic, homes sitting on the market for months, price cuts becoming normal again, sellers chasing the market downward. But denial is still strong. Many homeowners are anchored to peak valuations from 6 or 12 months ago. They're waiting for buyers who no longer exist. The market has moved on. They just haven't accepted it yet. People love to say this isn't like 2008. They're right, it is worse. In 2006, prices were high, lending was reckless, interest rates were lower, and insurance was affordable. But today, prices are even higher relative to income, mortgages are locked at 6 to 7%, insurance is unstable or unavailable, and climate risk is accelerating. Back then, the problem was financial engineering. This time, the problem is reality. You can't bail out rising seas, failing insurance markets, or incomes that don't support housing costs. Here's something you won't hear from real estate marketing channels: institutional investors are quietly selling. Not all at once. Not loudly. But steadily. Private equity firms that bought aggressively in 2021 and 2022 are listing properties while liquidity still exists. They're not waiting for the downturn, they're positioning ahead of it. And who are they selling to? Regular buyers who think they're getting a deal because the home is only 10% overpriced instead of 25%. That's how late-stage bubbles transfer risk. The market will crack from the outside in. Florida's most expensive neighborhoods won't be the first to fall. Crashes start from second-tier cities, inland metros, markets fueled by stretched affordability. Places like Cape Coral, Port St. Lucie, and parts of Central Florida are already showing weakness. Inventory is rising. Price cuts are accelerating. Buyer urgency is gone. Yet the messaging remains upbeat: it's just a normalization. That's exactly what was said in 2007. Florida's demographics are shifting, and not in a good way. Florida's long-term model relies heavily on wealthy retirees. But that demographic is changing. As people age, healthcare access matters more, storm risk feels less tolerable, and insurance costs hit fixed incomes harder. Many older homeowners are choosing to sell, not buy. But the generations expected to replace them face a problem: they can't afford Florida housing. Millennials were burned in 2008. Gen Z is deeply risk-aware. Both are far more cautious about over-leveraging. That leaves a shrinking buyer pool. The political solution is always the same: build more housing. But supply isn't the real issue. There are plenty of homes, they're just priced for people who don't exist at scale. Luxury condos sit empty. Starter homes are priced like executive properties. And rent doesn't align with wages. You can't solve a math problem with more construction. Here's the uncomfortable forecast. Over the next year, insurance withdrawals will continue, premiums will rise further, buyer demand will weaken, sellers will capitulate, and price declines will accelerate. This won't feel like a sudden crash at first. It will feel like stagnation, then frustration, then urgency, and then panic. That's how every bubble ends. Florida isn't collapsing because people don't love it. It's collapsing because the economics no longer support the dream. When prices exceed incomes, when insurance fails, when climate risk becomes unavoidable, and when buyers disappear, markets correct violently. The warning signs are everywhere. The only real question is whether you recognize them in time. Because when the music stops, there won't be enough chairs, and Florida real estate is running out of greater fools.